Welcome, Prosper Portland. I'm so happy y'all here with me today. So, at Workplace Change, we have our conference every year, and we celebrate a game changer. Game changers for us is not a nomination process. It is workplace change, being on the streets, talking to people, engaging with the community, and hearing about organizations, corporations, companies, governmental, entities that are really walking the talk. And by walking the talk, meaning doing right by people, doing the things that they said that they were going to do, even when it hurt, right? Even when it hurts, still current tense. And as we were exploring who to celebrate, right, of all the clients that we work with, of all the government entities that we know, of all the corporations that we are excited by, we said, Prosper Portland. We have got to celebrate Prosper Portland, because who better embodies what a game changer is truly in the state of Oregon? Better than Prosper Portland, right? I remember Prosper Portland before it was Prosper Portland. What was the name? It was a PDC, Portland Development Commission. And Portland Development Commission was not nearly as, communities of color centric and inclusive as Prosper Portland has demonstrated itself to be. That transformation has been indeed a transformation from PDC to Prosper Portland, and then earning your stripes as being new, being fresh, being truly inclusive. Tell me about that transition. Like, how did you stick the landing? I mean, I'm sure you're still a work in progress, but how did you really kind of earn your stripes as a real change agent in a way that PDC hadn't, and now Prosper Portland is?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. This is so meaningful to all of us. I know that this means so much to us. We respect you so much and the work that you do. And so this feels like a truly great honor. It's definitely been a work in progress. It's taken a decade plus. And I think we are building on work that predates all of us. But ultimately, it came down to the fact that we looked around and identified, as the city's economic development agency, where there were gaps in access to economic opportunity and where those systemic barriers were continuing to create and replicate the historic harm. We looked at our agency's past. And so we were really clear-eyed in terms of what our vision was for building an equitable and inclusive economy in Portland. And that's meant that we needed to have updated strategies, that we needed to have updated hiring processes, that we needed to change our culture, that we needed to change our policies and our practices. It didn't happen overnight. We still have a lot of work to do, but it's been this really self-reinforcing process whereby I think we can now say that the entire organization is committed to the vision of creating equitable and inclusive growth in Portland. And that kind of commitment to the vision and commitment to that at all levels, internally and externally, has been central to our ability to change.
Absolutely. So KB, I want to follow up with you. I'm gonna get back to the scripted question.
Yeah.
So I call you KB because I've known you for many, many, many years, but Kimberly Brown, you say that, you had to change all the systems and really kind of shepherd in transformation, but you didn't have to. You had the job without all of this commitment, without all of this demonstrated commitment to really be transformational. What was the catalyst for you saying, against all odds, and we're gonna talk about some of those odds here in just a bit, but against all odds, I'm gonna be steadfast on this commitment to do it very differently than we've ever done it in the past, and differently than most other development commissions in the nation and in the world have done it? Like, where is that coming from?
Such a good question. A couple things I'll say. One is just a personal, deep-seated belief in the value of inclusive, equitable growth and in the diversity of our city, and just knowing that it is not a relevant economic development agency if you are not supporting everyone. That's not doing your job.
Say it one more time.
It is not a relevant economic development agency if you are not supporting everyone. It's not. And so I was really clear in the hiring process for when I sought to be the executive director that this was what I thought needed to happen. And I had been within the organization for 5 years, and there were a lot of staff, there were a lot of community partners, our board, city council, people saw the need for transformation. And so I think that there was a lot of support for this work. This is not work that any one person does by themselves, but I was very transparent in that hiring process that I thought that we needed to have a new name. We needed to really lean into our community-led, community-driven work. And then, very quickly on, when you came on and with, executive team leadership, management team leadership, and staff, there was a lot of enthusiasm for it. And I want to be clear that the board has been a stalwart champion along the line, and you need that. You have to have this. It's not possible for one person to do it alone.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So I want to pivot. So as you said, PDC, not Prosper Portland, had a legacy of displacing Black people in particular, but really anybody who was poor, anyone who was, historically underrepresented, just unseen communities throughout the region. How have you gone about trying to re-earn that specific community's trust? Communities of color, Black communities specifically, what kind of work are you doing to repair?
Can I offer? Can I just jump in here?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of work has been done, and there's still so much ahead of us, right? I think the fact that we still have folks who choose to join us at co-creation tables, who still choose to join us at oversight tables, who are still telling us when we're doing well or when we can do way better, means that we're still actively growing that trust. And so it's not, I don't think it's ever something that we'll have flipped a switch. But I think it's something that definitely is recognizable. It's something that allowed me to consider the role I'm in now. I've been here for a little over a year, and in working with everyone here, just recognizing the work that had been done and seeing other community members and friends of mine and small business owners who had been connected to Prosper, I recognized that it was much more than just the previous PDC and the decisions that were made and the harm that was done. And I think for entities, especially government entities, who have been, part of societal ills that really have displaced folks, that have gentrified communities, like PDC did in the past, and now Prosper now, we have a huge responsibility to show up for community now, and to show up for the community that is interested in working with us. And community is no longer passive, right? They're no longer just saying, y'all did bad stuff, you should do better. They're showing up to the door. They're on our board. They're asking for disaggregated data. They're really deeply engaged. And I think we have leaders like those who are also here with us today that show up to the table and continue to be with folks even when it's very hard. I mean, I think we've all been in meetings where folks have called on stuff that was here for much, before us, much longer before us. And as someone who's raising a fourth generation Oregonian, I know exactly what those feelings and what those concerns are. But being able to be a part of the shift right now is something I'm excited about. And I think having some of my own past lived experience as a Black Oregonian, as a Black Portlander, means that I sit at tables alongside with many of my colleagues, and we know why the change is important. It's not just important because it's going to be on our website. It's important because it matters to our families, and it matters to small businesses who are the engine that moves Portland and Oregon forward.
So Shabri, when you came and worked for Prosper Portland, that was a big deal. I mean, Shabri has been in the community for a long time, doing the work in a variety of sectors, demonstrating her commitment for marginalized communities near and far. Why did you choose Prosper now?
I will say, having sat at some of the tables for many years, so I was the community member on the other side of the table saying, Prosper, y'all gotta show up, we need this information. Yeah. And what kept happening was the team was responsive.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I could show up in a place that was both full of curiosity, as a community member, to better understand what was really going on. Because I sat with these folks and recognized, Kimberly wasn't in some room how can I harm the Black community in Portland?
Right.
Nor were any of the leaders that she worked with, but that they kept showing up and they made the space and they were having the hard conversations. And they responded when we asked the really hard questions. And I will say, what you say matters. Nomenclature matters. And Prosper had, previous to me, already moved towards aspirations around being an anti-racist organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see that every day, especially in government entities. And so for someone who has been doing that work and is connected to that work and had been some of the community on the other side saying, Prosper, you're not doing enough, or what you're doing was wrong before, knowing that I could still show up and that I could have whole conversations with Kimberly and that she wasn't, just discounting me because I had previously been someone who had called Prosper out, but saying we need your type of leadership here. That was something that I was interested in. And I had met folks like Kay and Robert in community who had been doing the work, and I had seen what it looks like to ensure access to capital was something that was available. And so knowing that I had seen actual impact from the work that the team was doing, I felt like I could bring the expertise and the skills that I had to just support and work alongside the leaders that are at Prosper today.
I love that. I love that the person who was saying, Prosper, do it better, they said, come and help us do it better. And you're like, okay. I love that so much. All right, well, righting wrongs and doing that work is easier said than done, right? We can preach and pontificate all day long about what should happen, what could happen, etc. But doing the work, earning the trust is a lot of work. And I'm sure you've experienced some pushback. So I want to know, what are some of the greatest hurdles that you all have experienced in doing this work? And the reason why I ask this question is because there are a lot of people, a lot of leaders who are saying they want to do the work differently, they want to be different, but it is hard, right? They face resistance, they face pushback. And I'm interested in what are some of the strategies that have worked for you all or hasn't worked for you all that people can avoid with respect to doing this work better, right? And improving over time.
Well, I would say one of the things is just balancing being responsive to community with the urgency that we all work with.
Right.
I think when we were doing the Cully TIF work, we were being responsive to community approaching Prosper and looking at how can we do tax increment finance different.
So when you say Cully TIF work, just explain what that is real quick.
It was an exploratory process where 7 community-based organizations approached Prosper, Portland Housing Bureau, and the city to look at how can we use this tool differently than we have in the past without causing the same sort of harm. And really kind of being responsive to community and listening. It's a listening posture and being willing to be challenged, I think is really important. But it is that balancing act of bringing community along and making sure that they're not just at the table, but they also have the knowledge to participate in the discussion and really positioning the community to represent, the folks that live in the Cully neighborhood. There was a breadth and depth of engagement that I don't think that we've ever seen when it comes to the development of a TIF district with the houseless community and mobile home residents and non-English speakers, and really bringing all that feedback together in a kind of co-creation process to develop a plan and for the next 20, 30 years of investment for the neighborhood. And really thinking about what return on investment means too. That community benefit is a return on investment from our work.
Yeah. So how did that TIF project differ from previous TIF projects? Because I would presume every project of this nature would be as inclusive as that. But no, historically?
I think historically TIF has been kind of a top-down approach where there's been engagement, but the feedback hasn't been incorporated in the way, and the prioritization hasn't been the same as it was with Cully. I think we all acknowledge that there's going to be growth in this city, and how do we preserve what we have and create opportunity for folks? And that, being able to hear from the various groups throughout the neighborhood really did inform what were priorities in the plan.
Right on.
Yeah.
I know I've seen that, just being able to have those difficult conversations with community. And when I started at Prosper was shortly after the whole Trader Joe's issue kind of blew up. And I remember hearing the community, saying we weren't engaged in this process. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about PDC's history. I didn't grow up here. I wasn't really aware of it, but that really kind of showed me there's a lot of harm that's been done that folks are really responding to. And for me, just to see how much the agency has really engaged with communities and things like our North Northeast Action Plan Committee. I know for myself, when I was looking at creating loan programs, the engagement that I did with community, and modeling what I had seen other folks do, that's a really important part of the work, and that includes sometimes hearing folks say, "You guys have really committed some serious harms," and hearing, feeling those things that they've experienced. And so, for me, I've seen so many examples of how that's been done, and I think that's done a lot in helping us to earn more trust from the community.
Absolutely. And Kimberly, you were going to jump in?
Well, I mean, just building on what Robert and Kay have said, I think that, there's going to be, in any organizational transformation, there's going to be folks internally who need support in terms of that change, and then you have your external partners. And I think the thing that I think about is just, gentle pressure relentlessly applied, of the practice of showing up every day and helping your colleagues understand how we're moving this work forward in a different way, and bringing people along in that. And then externally, just showing up, and just the practice of going out and engaging and listening. I think it's, I think people can think that you have to do this dramatic change overnight, and that just isn't how it works. It's relational, and things work, you make progress at the speed of trust, right? And that is earned over time and can be quickly taken back. And so I think that's just, in terms of lessons learned, you're seeing in Cully this virtuous cycle of people building trust as we were creating the Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative districts, and that 10-year partnership within Cully for a small TIF district, I think was really important, to then having those partners come forward and say, we trust you enough to have a conversation about doing this at scale, or just so I think that's really important, is how are you identifying where there are trust deficits, and then not shying away from that, but moving forward and just showing up consistently.
Okay. So everyone's excited about this work that you all are doing? Is that, because what you're saying is you're shifting where the power center is, right? Robert just said, TIF used to be from the top down, right? And now we're coming from the bottom up, the grassroots up. So how people feeling about that, who maybe are not at the center of the conversation the way in which they were previously?
I think it's a hard conversation all the time, right? I think anytime you prioritize, that conceptually prioritizing means that other things aren't going to be prioritized at the time. But what we know are there are finite resources, and at a time especially like now, when our economy is really dealing with complex issues, prioritization and understanding how we as a collective, as Portlanders, will move forward means you need smart, data-informed prioritization. And so when you share the data with folks, when you share what inclusive growth really looks like and how it moves us all forward, folks can not be excited about that, but once they start to see what the actual movement looks like, what shifting power dynamics, how it actually serves us all, they'll either still be mad and off on the side, or they're going to hop on the train and move on along with us, because that moves Portland forward when we all collectively do have power and access to what we need, especially from an economic standpoint. When economic opportunity is at our fingertips, but when you have organizations and partners and government entities that work together to actually move people forward, folks end up wanting to be a part of it. And if they don't, then I don't necessarily want to say they get left behind, but they definitely have many lessons to learn as folks are moving forward.
So are you experiencing more, train hoppers, meaning they're getting on board and they're riding with you, or more, sitting at the sideline grimaces?
As someone new, right? What I think is really powerful, and just in the year that I've been here, Prosper, at least just from our workforce, continues to be infused with folks who are all about this work, right? So we're attracting the folks who want to do this. And I would say, Kay, I think it's really great to share, we were both in the finance industry, and what you saw in Prosper attracted him because, and I don't want to tell your whole story, so I'll let you, but it attracted me as well. And I think you see Prosper shifting, and to your point, game changer. When you flip the game and you change it, you attract those who want to do the work with you.
Right on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I came from a banking background, but before that, I had been a small business owner for 15 years. And definitely,
What kind of business did you have?
I had a construction cleanup business. And so we'd go after, the project was done with the crew and clean it up and get it ready for occupancy. And I did that for a long time. And, but wanted to move into something else and ended up in banking. But the one thing that stuck with me was just how difficult it was for me to get financing for my business. Because there's, do you own a house? All of those questions and things that often disqualify folks. And so when I was in banking and seeing that most of the folks we were helping didn't look like me, and that the folks that did were having more hurdles to getting financing. When I had the opportunity to come to Prosper, that was like, oh, this is great, because now here's an opportunity to actually help folks get that access to capital that maybe didn't have it. And I've seen that work even shift and evolve for us and being even more intentional and looking at what are some of those hurdles and how can we remove that. And so that's been really what's kept me here, and for me has been this real, like a daily inspiration, not only in the work that I do, but seeing throughout the agency how folks are so intent on really making sure that we have an equitable economy and are really leaning into that work, both internally and then with the community.
Right on. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That is, I do think that there are people who continue to have a sense that economic development and redevelopment needs to be done in a certain way, and it needs to be focused on growth and just growth. And so there are still ongoing conversations that we need to have where we are really explicit about the fact that we believe that inclusion is a part of growth. Right? They're not two different things. And historically, you've had kind of equity work on the one side and economic development on the other side, and they were seen as complementary but really different practices. And what you'll see in our work and what we've done just recently with the adoption of Advance Portland, which is the city's new economic development agency, is just explicitly, a new economic development plan, is just explicitly acknowledging that growth and inclusion go together. And so people who think that, well, if you're focusing on inclusive growth, then somehow you're not practicing economic development, that's such an outdated sense of the practice. We've evolved as a practice in terms of economic development nationally. The conversation has evolved. And so we certainly need to have those conversations about how do we bring people along and just help people understand that this is what it looks like to do good economic development work.
Right on. Okay. So what's next? I mean, you all are light years away from where you were 15 years ago, but we keep iterating, we keep evolving. So what's next for you all with respect to incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being fair and being honest and being, inclusive to everybody out there in this economic development effort that you are responsible for the entire city of Portland? What's next?
I think it's building a plan and working that plan, right? And understanding who your partners are and who has specific roles and responsibilities in this inclusive growth, and ensuring that they're informed about what those plans look like, and knowing what success looks like so that we can all track, and then ensuring that the community who holds us accountable is right there at the table with us every step along the way, so that they can tell us if we're veering off or if this new idea that we have just isn't really cutting mustard, and how we shift. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most about the work of the leaders here today. Robert, I think about the work that your team did with the COVID relief funds and how you all showed up. I think you should share a little bit of
Game changing.
Yes.
I think it's a really good example of, engaging with community and listening about what prioritization means. I think when we have these instances, we see a continuing widening gap when there's economic impact. And being able to work with cultural chambers and really listen about how we direct the investment in the most meaningful and impactful way, I think is really kind of carried through, post-pandemic into the way we approach our programming now, and I think we have a really solid foundation that we want to continue to build on going forward, and making sure that small businesses not only have the opportunity to launch, but that over time that we're still providing the supports for them to strengthen and stabilize and grow as well. And so there's there's the opportunity for more connections too with businesses. I think about our Mercatus directory
Yeah.
and the work that we're doing around intentional purchasing and supplier diversity, and making sure that people are positioned to take advantage of those opportunities.
So this concludes our Game Changer interview. I'm sure we'll have to chop it up, but the whole video will be on YouTube. And I want to thank everybody for coming today. I know y'all are doing great work. Just paused your day to come and spend it with us, and just thank you.
Thank you so much.